A millionaire marries an obese woman as a bet and gets the surprise of his life. And when she found out about her husband's betrayal, her reaction left everyone stunned. Before we get into this juicy tale, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Welcome back to Will I Be Happy, where we dive into the extraordinary twists of love, resilience, and all the messy moments that shape our lives. I'm your narrator, and today's story is one of unexpected turns and ultimate transformation. Meet Karen, an obese but confident woman whose life takes a shocking detour. When she learns that her whirlwind romance and marriage to a billionaire was rooted in a bet, the golden hues of the setting sun bathed San Francisco's skyline, casting long shadows over the city's iconic hills. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of the exclusive Sky Lounge, the city below seemed almost miniature, a playground for the wealthy and powerful. Morgan Shine stood by the window, his reflection melding with the twinkling lights of the city. At 42, he exuded an air of unshakable confidence. His tailored suit hugged his athletic frame perfectly, and his dark hair was slicked back with precision. A self-made millionaire in the high-tech world, Morgan was known for his ruthless business tactics and a penchant for the finer things in life. He swirled the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler, watching as the ice cubes clinked softly. "Nexatech was supposed to be mine," he muttered under his breath, frustration evident in his tone. Behind him, the sound of polished Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor signaled the arrival of Richard Lawson. Richard, a fellow tech tycoon, was the only person who could rival Morgan's success and ego. With his sandy blonde hair and a perpetual smirk, Richard was the embodiment of charm laced with cunning. "Morgan, drowning your sorrows already?" Richard drawled, taking a seat at the plush leather booth. Morgan didn't turn around. "Enjoying your victory lap?" Richard chuckled. "Oh, come now, no hard feelings, all right? Business is business." Morgan faced him, his blue eyes cold. "You blindsided me," Richard smirked. "You underestimated me, Morgan. Too busy chasing supermodels to see me coming." Morgan's jaw tightened. "Careful, Lawson. You're treading on thin ice." "Am I?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Or are you just bitter that, for once, someone beat you at your own game?" Morgan took a deep breath, steadying himself. "What do you want, Richard?" "A wager, of course," Richard replied casually. "You lost Nexatech, so now I want something more interesting." Morgan frowned. "We never agreed on that." Richard's grin widened. "Close enough. Silence is consent, Morgan." Morgan clenched his fists. "What do you want? Money? Shares in my company?" Richard laughed heartily. "Money? Please. I have more than enough." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You will marry my assistant, Karen." For a moment, silence hung thick between them. Then, Morgan scoffed. "Your assistant? What's this about?" Richard's grin widened. "Consider it a challenge. You're always surrounded by the same type of women. Glamorous, superficial. I wonder how you'd fare with someone different." Morgan arched an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Karen Strady is not your usual type," Richard said, choosing his words carefully. "She's intelligent, hardworking, but she doesn't fit into your high society mold." Morgan recalled Karen vaguely, a woman in her late 30s with kind hazel eyes and a warm smile. She was plus-sized, carrying herself with a confidence that belied the dismissive glances she often received in their world of polished perfection. "Why her?" Morgan asked, intrigued despite himself. Richard shrugged nonchalantly. "Maybe I think you could use some grounding, or maybe I just want to see if you can handle someone with real substance." Morgan smirked. "You think I can't charm your assistant into marrying me?" "Prove me wrong," Richard challenged. "You have 2 months." Morgan took a long sip of his scotch, considering. Marrying someone like Karen was certainly outside his norm. But perhaps that was the point. It would be a game, a test of his persuasive abilities. All right, he agreed, a hint of arrogance in his voice. I'll do it. But when I succeed, you stay out of my business for good. Richard extended his hand. Deal. Morgan shook it firmly. The next morning, Morgan sat in his expansive corner office, overlooking the bustling streets of Silicon Valley. The minimalist design of his workspace exuded sophistication. Glass walls, sleek furniture, and cutting-edge technology at his fingertips. Mr. Shine, your 10 a.m. meeting is waiting in conference room B, his assistant Lila announced over the intercom. Tell them I'll be there shortly, he replied, his mind elsewhere. He pulled up Karen Strady's profile on his computer. Her personnel file was thorough. Degrees in business administration and psychology, commendations for her efficiency and dedication, and a history of volunteer work with various charities. Her ID photo showed a woman with soft features and a bright smile. She was undeniably attractive, but not in the conventional way celebrated in his social circles. Her full figure was accentuated by her professional attire, and there was a warmth in her eyes that piqued his curiosity. Interesting, he mused aloud. Across town, Karen navigated the organized chaos of Richard Lawson's office. At 38, she was the backbone of his operations. A master multitasker with an uncanny ability to anticipate needs before they arose. Her chestnut hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and she wore a tailored blouse and skirt that flattered her curvy silhouette. Karen, I need the updated projections for Q4 on my desk in an hour, Richard called out as he breezed past her desk. They're already in your inbox, she replied with a polite smile. He paused, giving her an appraising look. Efficient as always. Richard's eyes flickered with a hint of something unreadable. How would you feel about assisting Morgan Shine on a new project? Karen blinked in surprise. Mr. Shine? I wasn't aware we collaborated with his company directly. We're exploring new partnerships, Richard explained smoothly. He specifically requested you. She frowned slightly. Me? Are you sure? Positive. He was quite insistent, Richard assured her. It would be a great opportunity for you. She hesitated. Well, if you think it's best. Later that day, as Karen organized files on her computer, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Hello, this is Karen Strady. Miss Strady, this is Morgan Shine. She sat up straighter, surprised. Mr. Shine, hello, how can I assist you? I was hoping we could meet to discuss a potential collaboration, he said smoothly. Are you available for dinner this evening? Dinner, she echoed, caught off guard. I suppose that could work. Excellent. I'll have a car pick you up at 7. Before she could respond, he ended the call. Karen stared at her phone, a mix of confusion and curiosity swirling in her mind. That evening, a sleek black limousine pulled up outside her modest apartment complex. Karen stepped out, wearing a deep emerald dress that complemented her complexion and accentuated her curves tastefully. She took a deep breath, smoothing down the fabric nervously. The driver opened the door for her. Miss Strady, welcome. Thank you, she said softly, sliding into the luxurious interior. The car whisked her away to an exclusive rooftop restaurant that offered panoramic views of the city. As she exited the elevator, she spotted Morgan waiting by a table adorned with flickering candles. Good evening, he greeted her, flashing a charming smile. Mr. Shine, she replied, extending her hand. He took it gently. Please, call me Morgan. All right, Morgan. They sat down and a waiter promptly poured them each a glass of fine wine. I hope you don't mind the short notice, Morgan began. I find spontaneity keeps things interesting. It's certainly unexpected, Karen admitted, but I'm intrigued to hear about this project. He leaned back, his eyes studying her. All in good time. Tell me about yourself first. She tilted her head, puzzled. What would you like to know? Anything you'd like to share? Your interests, passions, what drives you? She hesitated. Well, I enjoy volunteering at local shelters when I can. I find it fulfilling to give back to the community. Admirable, he said sincerely. Not many people prioritize that. What about you? She asked. What drives you beyond business? He took a sip of his wine. Success, mostly. Building something lasting. Is that enough? He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Does success alone make you happy? She clarified. He considered her question. It's brought me a long way. But does it fulfill you? She pressed gently. He was taken aback by her directness. I suppose I've never thought about it deeply. She smiled softly. Perhaps it's worth considering. Their meals arrived. A culinary masterpiece of seared scallops and truffle risotto. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily. Karen shared anecdotes from her childhood, her love for literature, and her dream of one day opening a community center. Morgan found himself genuinely engaged, a rarity for him. You're quite different from anyone I've met, he remarked, noting how her confidence and self-assuredness shone through, irrespective of societal expectations. She laughed lightly. I could say the same about you. He leaned forward. Is that so? Well, you're not at all what I expected, she admitted. You have a reputation for being intense. He smirked. And what do you think now? I think there's more to you than meets the eye, she said thoughtfully. After dinner, they walked along the rooftop garden, the city lights shimmering below. Thank you for a lovely evening, she said, gazing out at the view. The pleasure was mine, he replied. She turned to face him. So, about this project? He chuckled. Always business with you. She shrugged playfully. You did invite me under the pretense of work. True, he conceded. I have a trip planned this weekend to discuss a potential merger. I'd like you to accompany me. She blinked. Me? Are you sure? I'm not an executive. I value your insight, he assured her. Besides, it's time you saw the bigger picture. She considered his proposal. All right, if you think I can contribute. I have no doubt, he said confidently. The next few days flew by as Karen prepared for the trip. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than met the eye, but she pushed her doubts aside. Meanwhile, Morgan met with Richard in a secluded corner of a high-end club. Progress? Richard asked. She's coming with me this weekend, Morgan replied coolly. Just remember, no tricks, Richard warned. I don't need them, Morgan said confidently. Richard raised his glass. To fair play. On Friday afternoon, Karen arrived at the private airstrip, her suitcase in hand. Morgan awaited her beside his sleek jet, exuding effortless charm. Ready for an adventure? He asked. She smiled nervously. As ready as I'll ever be. They boarded the plane, and soon they were soaring above the clouds. Karen marveled at the luxury surrounding her. The plush seats, the personalized service, the panoramic windows offering breathtaking views. This is incredible, she admitted. He watched her with interest. I sometimes forget how remarkable it is. She glanced at him. You shouldn't. It's a privilege. He nodded thoughtfully. You're right. After a few hours, the jet began its descent. Where exactly are we going? She asked. He grinned mysteriously. You'll see. They landed on a secluded runway flanked by palm trees and crystal-clear waters. A chauffeur escorted them to a private villa overlooking the ocean. Morgan, I don't even have words, she breathed, taking in the stunning scenery. He gestured toward the terrace. I thought we could discuss business in a more relaxed setting. She raised an eyebrow. This seems a bit extravagant for a business meeting. He shrugged casually. I believe in mixing work with pleasure. As they dined under the starlit sky, the conversation flowed effortlessly. They debated philosophy, shared their favorite books, and laughed over childhood misadventures. You're full of surprises, she told him, sipping her wine. He smiled. I could say the same about you. A comfortable silence settled between them as they listened to the waves gently crashing against the shore. Karen, he began softly, I feel like I've known you much longer than just a few days." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I feel the same." He reached out and gently took her hand. "There's something about you that draws me in." She blushed slightly, her confidence wavering for a moment. "Morgan, He leaned in closer. "I know this may seem sudden, but I can't ignore this connection." She searched his face. "Are you sure this isn't just the ambiance talking?" He chuckled. "The ambiance helps, but no, this is real." She hesitated, aware of the stark differences between them. Not just in lifestyle, but in how the world perceived them. "This is all so unexpected." "Sometimes the best things are," he said, his gaze unwavering. She took a deep breath. "I can't deny that I feel it too." He smiled warmly. "Then let's see where this leads." The weekend continued in a whirlwind of shared experiences, sailing, exploring hidden coves, and long conversations that stretched late into the night. By the time they returned to San Francisco, Karen felt as though her life had been irrevocably changed. Despite her initial reservations about her appearance and how it might be perceived in Morgan's world, he seemed genuinely captivated by her. As she stood outside her apartment building, Morgan took her hand once more. "This doesn't have to end here." She looked up at him. "What are you suggesting?" "Let me take you out again. Properly this time," he proposed. She smiled softly. "I'd like that." Watching from a distance, Richard observed them with keen interest. As he saw Morgan kiss Karen's hand before leaving, a sly grin spread across his face. "Well played, Morgan," he murmured to himself. But the game's only just begun. Back in his penthouse, Morgan poured himself a drink, a mix of satisfaction and something else swirling within him. He had expected this to be a simple task, a means to an end. But Karen had surprised him at every turn with her intelligence, wit, and the way she carried herself with confidence despite societal judgments. The morning sun peeked through the curtains of Karen's modest apartment, casting a warm glow over her cozy living room. She sat at her small kitchen table, sipping a cup of chamomile tea while flipping through the pages of a well-worn novel. The scent of lavender lingered in the air, a calming presence amid the fluttering nerves she couldn't quite shake. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. A text from Richard. "Karen, I hope you're prepared for the assignment with Morgan Shine. This could be a significant opportunity for both of us. Make the most of it." She sighed, still puzzled by the sudden involvement with Morgan. Why me? She wondered aloud. She was accustomed to working behind the scenes, organizing schedules, and ensuring operations ran smoothly. Not jet-setting with tech moguls. But Richard trusted her, and she didn't want to disappoint him. At the private airstrip, Morgan stood beside his sleek Gulfstream jet, exuding confidence in a crisp white shirt and tailored trousers. As Karen approached, he flashed a charismatic smile. "Good morning, Karen," he greeted, his gaze briefly taking in her appearance. She wore a flowing teal blouse that complemented her complexion and black slacks that were both comfortable and professional. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, her plus-sized figure exuding an understated elegance. "Morning, Morgan," she replied, adjusting the strap of her satchel. "This is quite the setup for a business trip." He chuckled. "I believe in traveling comfortably. After all, we're going to be discussing important matters." They boarded the jet, and Karen couldn't help but admire the luxurious interior. Plush leather seats, polished wood accents, and ambient lighting that created a serene atmosphere. As the plane took off, Morgan settled into the seat across from her. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? Mimosa?" She shook her head lightly. "I'm fine, thank you, though I am curious about the details of this assignment." He leaned back, feigning nonchalance. "Richard didn't brief you?" "Only that I'd be assisting you on a project," she replied, her eyes searching his. He smiled enigmatically. "All in good time. For now, let's just enjoy the flight." She nodded, turning her gaze to the window. Below, the patchwork of the city gave way to vast stretches of ocean. She couldn't deny the thrill of adventure coursing through her veins. After a few hours, the jet began its descent toward a verdant island surrounded by crystal-clear waters. Karen's eyes widened as she took in the breathtaking view. "Where are we?" she asked, awe evident in her voice. "Welcome to Isla Paradiso," Morgan announced, "a private island that's perfect for uninterrupted discussions." She raised an eyebrow. "Quite the location for a meeting." He grinned. "I prefer to think outside the box." They disembarked onto a sun-soaked tarmac where a classic convertible awaited them. As they drove along a winding road framed by lush tropical foliage, Karen felt both exhilarated and apprehensive. "Morgan, this seems a bit extravagant," she remarked, trying to mask her unease. He glanced at her, his eyes twinkling. "I find that a stimulating environment fosters creativity." She offered a tentative smile. "I suppose that's one way to look at it." They arrived at a secluded beach where a lavish picnic was arranged under a canopy. Soft blankets, oversized cushions, and an array of gourmet dishes awaited them. The gentle sound of waves provided a soothing backdrop. "This is beautiful," she admitted, taking in the serene setting. "I'm glad you like it," he replied, gesturing for her to sit. As they began to eat, the conversation flowed more easily. Karen found herself sharing stories about her upbringing, her passion for community service, and her love for classical music. "You have such a rich inner world," Morgan observed, genuinely intrigued. She laughed softly. "I don't know about that. I just try to stay true to myself." He tilted his head thoughtfully. "It's rare to find someone so authentic." She met his gaze, a hint of skepticism in her eyes. "Flattery won't get you anywhere, Mr. Shine." He chuckled. "Is it so hard to believe I find you fascinating?" She looked away, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the picnic blanket. "It's just unexpected." He reached out, his hand hovering near hers. "Karen, I brought you here because I wanted to get to know you better. Not just as Richard's assistant, but as a person." She took a deep breath, her guard slightly lowering. "I appreciate that, but I can't help but wonder why." He smiled softly. "Because ever since our dinner, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." She raised her eyes to meet his, searching for sincerity. "Morgan, I'm not sure what to say." "Say you'll give me a chance," he replied earnestly. She hesitated. "This is all so sudden." "I know," he conceded. "But sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them." Over the next few days, they explored the island together. They hiked to hidden waterfalls, shared stories under the stars, and discovered shared interests that surprised them both. One afternoon, as they walked along the shoreline, Karen paused to gaze out at the horizon. "It's so peaceful here," she mused. "It is," Morgan agreed, stepping closer. "I've always found the ocean to be calming." She glanced at him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You know, you're different from what I expected." He feigned offense. "Should I be concerned?" She laughed. "Not at all. It's just, you're more down to earth than your reputation suggests." He shrugged modestly. "Reputations are often misleading." She nodded. "True." He looked at her thoughtfully. "And what about your reputation?" She arched an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware I had on. He smiled. "People might underestimate you, but they shouldn't." A flicker of self-consciousness crossed her face. "Well, I suppose I've never been one to stand out." He frowned slightly. "I think you stand out in all the right ways." She blushed, her cheeks warming under his gaze. "You're quite the charmer." "Only when inspired," he replied, his tone playful. Despite her initial reservations, Karen found herself increasingly drawn to Morgan. His attentiveness, his wit, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts. It all felt like a dream. Yet a small voice in the back of her mind cautioned her to be careful. After all, men like Morgan Shine didn't typically pursue women like her. A month passed, and Morgan continued to woo Karen with grand gestures and thoughtful surprises. They shared quiet dinners where conversation flowed effortlessly. One evening, as they dined at his place, Karen gazed out at the city lights. "It's amazing how much has changed in such a short time," she reflected. He reached across the table to take her hand. "Change can be a good thing." She smiled softly. "I suppose it can." He squeezed her hand gently. "Karen, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He stood, moving to her side, and knelt down on one knee. A hush fell over the surrounding tables as patrons looked on with interest. "Karen Strady, you've brought so much joy into my life," he began, his eyes locking with hers. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" She gasped, her free hand covering her mouth. Tears brimmed in her eyes as a whirlwind of emotions surged within her. "Morgan, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he urged softly. "Make me the happiest man alive." She searched his face, seeing only sincerity. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I'll marry you." Applause from staff workers erupted around them as he slipped a delicate diamond ring onto her finger. He stood, pulling her into a gentle embrace. She held onto him tightly, her doubts momentarily silenced by the overwhelming joy she felt. That night, as she lay in bed, Karen stared at the ring glittering on her finger. A mix of elation and disbelief washed over her. The day after, Morgan met with Richard in a dimly lit lounge. Richard raised his glass in a mock toast. "To the happy couple," he said with a sly grin. Morgan clinked his glass against Richard's. "Your skepticism was unfounded." Richard chuckled. "I must admit you exceeded my expectations." "Never doubt my capabilities," Morgan replied smugly. Richard eyed him shrewdly. "And how do you feel about her?" Morgan shrugged. "She's charming, intelligent. A pleasant companion? Is that all?" Richard pressed. "What are you getting at?" Morgan asked, a hint of irritation creeping into his tone. "Just curious if the great Morgan Shine might be developing real feelings?" Richard teased. Morgan scoffed. "Don't be absurd. This is merely a fulfillment of our agreement." "Of course," Richard said smoothly, "though I'd caution you to keep your emotions in check." "I have everything under control," Morgan asserted firmly. "Very well," Richard conceded. "So when's the wedding?" "Soon," Morgan replied. "No reason to delay," Richard smirked. "I look forward to it." As the days passed, Karen immersed herself in wedding preparations. "I was thinking something intimate," she suggested. "Just close friends and family." He nodded. "Whatever makes you happy." She smiled appreciatively. "Thank you for being so understanding. I just told my parents," she said when he answered. "How did it go?" he inquired. "Better than I expected," she replied. They were surprised but supportive. "That's good to hear," he said. "Perhaps we can all have dinner soon." "I'd like that," she said warmly. That night, as Morgan sat alone in his penthouse, he contemplated the events unfolding. The bet was nearly won, yet a nagging sensation tugged at him. He recalled the moments he'd shared with Karen. The genuine laughter, the thoughtful conversations, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her passions. "She's different," he admitted to himself. But he quickly brushed the thought aside. Emotions would only complicate matters. He reached for his phone and sent a text to Richard. "Everything is proceeding as planned." A reply came moments later. "Excellent. Victory awaits." Morgan set the phone down, a hollow feeling settling in his chest. The sun dipped low over the desert horizon as Morgan and Karen sped along the open road toward Las Vegas. The convertible's top was down, and the warm wind tousled Karen's chestnut hair. She glanced over at Morgan, who seemed unusually at ease, a rare smile playing on his lips. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her tone a mix of excitement and apprehension. He reached over to squeeze her hand. Absolutely. A quick wedding feels right, doesn't it? She laughed softly. It's definitely spontaneous. I never imagined getting married by an Elvis impersonator. He grinned. It's all part of the charm. Besides, it's about us, not the ceremony. They arrived at the glitzy heart of Las Vegas, neon lights flickering to life as dusk settled. The little chapel of love awaited them, a quaint building adorned with flashing signs and a life-sized Elvis cutout at the entrance. Karen adjusted her simple white dress, which hugged her curves comfortably. She had chosen it hastily, but it made her feel beautiful. Morgan looked dashing in a tailored navy suit, his usually impeccable appearance softened by a genuine smile. Inside the chapel, an Elvis impersonator greeted them enthusiastically. "Welcome, folks. Ready to get hitched Vegas style?" Karen exchanged a nervous glance with Morgan. "This is so surreal," she whispered. He chuckled. "Just go with it." They stood before Elvis, who began the ceremony with a flourish. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." "Uh-huh." Karen couldn't help but giggle at his exaggerated mannerisms. Despite the absurdity, there was a certain charm to it all. "Do you, Morgan Shine, take Karen Strady to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Elvis asked, gyrating his hips slightly. Morgan looked into Karen's eyes. "I do." "And do you, Karen Strady, take Morgan Shine to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She felt a swell of emotion. "I do. By the power vested in me by the state of Nevada and the king himself, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Morgan leaned in, and they shared a tender kiss as a photographer captured the moment. Applause erupted from the small gathering of onlookers who had wandered into the chapel. They exited into the warm night air, a flurry of confetti swirling around them. Karen's heart raced with a mix of joy and disbelief. "I can't believe we're married," she said, looking up at the dazzling lights above. Morgan wrapped an arm around her waist. "Believe it, Mrs. Shine." She smiled, savoring the sound of her new name. "So what's next?" He gestured toward a waiting limousine. "I thought we might celebrate with a night on the town before heading home." The following morning, they embarked on a private jet back to Silicon Valley. Karen gazed out the window at the clouds below, her thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. She was a married woman now, stepping into a world that was both exhilarating and intimidating. Upon arrival, Morgan escorted her to his luxury mansion nestled in the hills. The modern architectural marvel featured expansive glass walls, sleek lines, and panoramic views of the valley. "Welcome home," he announced, leading her through the grand foyer adorned with contemporary art pieces. Karen took in the opulence, feeling a bit overwhelmed. "This place is incredible." "It's ours now," he said confidently. "I want you to be comfortable here. Feel free to make any changes you'd like." She appreciated the gesture but couldn't shake a sense of displacement. "Thank you, Morgan. I might need some time to settle in." "Take all the time you need," he replied, his tone courteous. Over the next few days, Karen explored the mansion, acquainting herself with its many rooms and amenities. She particularly loved the library, a cozy space lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a large bay window overlooking the garden. One afternoon, as she arranged her belongings in the walk-in closet, she overheard Morgan on a phone call in the adjacent study. His tone was hushed but stern. "I've held up my end of the bargain," he said tersely. "The wedding happened. Now stay out of my affairs." Karen felt a pang of unease but decided not to dwell on it. She reminded herself that adjusting to a new life would come with its challenges. Meanwhile, Morgan grappled with conflicting emotions. The thrill of winning the bet with Richard was overshadowed by an unexpected fondness for Karen. Her genuine nature and positive outlook were a refreshing contrast to the superficial relationships he was accustomed to. One evening, he joined her on the terrace where she sat sipping tea, the sunset casting a warm glow around her. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. She smiled warmly. Of course not. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke. It's beautiful here, peaceful. He nodded. It's one of my favorite spots. She glanced at him thoughtfully. Morgan, can I ask you something? Anything, he replied. Why did you decide to marry me so quickly? She inquired gently. We haven't known each other that long. He was prepared for this question. When you know, he said smoothly. I didn't see any reason to wait. She considered his answer, her expression unreadable. I suppose life is short. Exactly, he agreed, taking a sip of his drink. She hesitated before adding, I just hope we're both in this for the right reasons. He met her gaze. What other reason is there besides wanting to spend our lives together? She looked away, a hint of doubt flickering across her face. You're right. The next day, Karen busied herself by getting to know the household staff. She spent time in the kitchen with the chef, learning new recipes, and chatted with the gardeners about the various plants on the property. Maria, the housekeeper, grew fond of Karen's down-to-earth demeanor. It's nice to have someone around who takes an interest in us, she remarked. Karen smiled. You're all part of this home. I want to know everyone who makes it run so smoothly. She took a deep breath. I appreciate everything you've done. The wedding, bringing me into your home. But I can't help feeling like there's a distance between us. He looked at her thoughtfully. What do you mean? It feels like we're playing roles, she explained. Husband and wife in name, but not in connection. He considered her words. I suppose we've both been busy adjusting. She nodded. I want this marriage to work, but we need to be honest with each other. As she spoke, Karen's voice remained steady, but inside she was battling the urge to scream. There was a chasm between them, one that couldn't be bridged by fancy dinners or expensive gifts. She had tried to ignore it, had tried to convince herself that maybe this was just how relationships with powerful men worked, but deep down, she knew it wasn't true. Love was supposed to feel like a partnership, not like being kept at arm's length. She needed to know if there was any real substance behind Morgan's charm, or if this was all just another illusion. He sighed, momentarily dropping his guarded demeanor. You're right. Perhaps we should make more of an effort. She offered a tentative smile. I'd like that. Over the next few days, they made small strides toward building a genuine relationship. They shared breakfasts on the terrace, took walks around the property, and discussed their interests. One afternoon, Morgan found Karen in the library, engrossed in a novel. Mind if I join you? He asked. She looked up, pleasantly surprised. Not at all. He settled into a chair across from her. What are you reading? She showed him the cover. It's a collection of classic short stories. He raised an eyebrow. I didn't take you for a classics enthusiast. She chuckled. There's a lot you don't know about me. Then tell me, he encouraged. They spent hours discussing literature, discovering shared opinions and friendly disagreements. For the first time, Morgan felt a genuine connection forming. 2 weeks had passed since their spontaneous wedding in Las Vegas. Karen was gradually adjusting to life in Morgan's sprawling Silicon Valley mansion. The modern architecture and sleek interiors were a stark contrast to her cozy apartment, but she brought warmth to the space with her personal touches. Fresh flowers on the dining table, aromatic candles in the living room, and a bookshelf filled with her favorite novels. One morning, the aroma of freshly baked muffins wafted through the house. Morgan followed the scent to the kitchen, where he found Karen humming softly as she pulled a tray out of the oven. Good morning, she greeted him cheerfully. I hope you like blueberry muffins. He raised an eyebrow, pleasantly surprised. I didn't know you baked. She laughed lightly. There are many things you don't know about me yet. He took a muffin, the warmth seeping into his hand. I'm beginning to realize that, he admitted, taking a bite. This is delicious. Glad you approve, she said with a smile. As the days unfolded, Morgan found himself increasingly drawn to Karen's positive energy. She had a way of making even the most mundane activities enjoyable. She spent afternoons tending to the garden, coaxing blooms from neglected flower beds. She organized game nights with the household staff, filling the mansion with laughter and camaraderie. One evening, they sat together on the terrace, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. "You have a beautiful home," Karen remarked, sipping her tea. "But it feels more like a gallery than a place where people live." He glanced around thoughtfully. "I've always seen it as an investment, a symbol of success." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting concern. "But does it make you happy?" He was taken aback by the question. "I suppose I've never thought about it." She smiled gently. "Maybe it's time you did." Their conversations ventured into uncharted territory, dreams, fears, and the complexities of life. Karen's insights challenged Morgan's perspectives, and he found himself opening up in ways he hadn't before. The golden hues of the late afternoon sun filtered through the expansive windows of Morgan's opulent mansion, casting a warm glow over the marble floors and gilded furnishings. Karen stood on the balcony of their master suite, her chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders, eyes closed as she breathed in the fragrant scent of blooming jasmine from the gardens below. Wrapped in the comfort of her newfound happiness, she felt as though nothing could tarnish the joy that the past 2 months had brought her. Her phone vibrated softly in her hand, pulling her from her reverie. Glancing at the screen, she saw Richard's name flashing. A slight frown creased her brow. It was unusual for him to call her directly. "Hello, Richard," she answered, trying to keep her tone pleasant. "Karen." Richard's voice was cold, devoid of any warmth or pleasantries. "We need to talk. Now." "Is something wrong?" she asked, a tinge of concern creeping into her voice. "Meet me at the Ravenwood Cafe in 30 minutes. It's about Morgan." "Can't this wait? Morgan will be home soon and—" "It's imperative that we speak privately," he interrupted brusquely. "You deserve to know the truth." Before she could respond, the line went dead. A sense of unease settled in her stomach, the serenity of moments before replaced by a creeping dread. At the Ravenwood Cafe, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to Karen's anxious state. The soft murmur of conversations and clinking of teacups seemed distant as she spotted Richard seated at a secluded corner table. His expression was unreadable, eyes steely as they met hers. "Richard?" she greeted cautiously, taking a seat opposite him. "What's this about?" He regarded her for a moment, his gaze piercing. "I'll get straight to the point," he said coolly. "Your marriage to Morgan is a farce." Her heart skipped a beat. "I don't understand." "Morgan married you because he lost a bet to me," Richard stated bluntly, his words slicing through the air like a blade. Karen felt as if the ground beneath her had shifted. "That can't be true," she whispered, shaking her head. "Why would you say such a thing?" He leaned forward, his lips curling into a faint, sardonic smile. 2 months ago, Morgan was certain he'd acquire Nexa Tech. Overconfident as always, he agreed to my terms. If he failed, he'd marry my assistant within 2 months. You were the wager, Karen. Karen's heart raced, her mind spinning as she struggled to process Richard's words. It felt as though her world had shifted on its axis, leaving her standing on unsteady ground. Could this really be true? She had allowed herself to believe in the fairy tale of their whirlwind romance, the way Morgan seemed captivated by her, unlike any man before. Yet now, doubts clawed at her chest, each one a stab of betrayal. How could she have been so blind? And why did this revelation hurt so deeply? "You're lying," she managed to say, her voice barely audible. Richard arched an eyebrow. "Am I? Think about it. The sudden interest, the whirlwind romance, the secret wedding. Does that sound like Morgan to you?" Images flashed through her mind. Morgan's intense gaze when they first met, the spontaneous dates, the way he'd swept her off her feet. Doubt began to seep in, eroding the foundation of trust she'd built. Why are you telling me this? She demanded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. He sat back, shrugging nonchalantly. Consider it a courtesy. You should also be aware that your husband's business dealings aren't as clean as he portrays. Illegal transactions, money laundering, the kind of activities that could land him in prison. Karen stared at him, the weight of his words pressing down on her chest. What do you expect me to do with this information? That's for you to decide, Richard replied, standing up. I thought you deserved to know the truth. What you do with it is your choice. As he walked away, Karen remained seated, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone. The bustling cafe seemed to blur around her, the chatter of patrons fading into an indistinct hum. Betrayal, hurt, and anger warred within her, each emotion threatening to overwhelm her. She had to know if it was true. Returning to the mansion, Karen felt like a stranger in her own home. The lavish decor, once a source of delight, now seemed ostentatious and hollow. She avoided the staff, not trusting herself to maintain composure. In the quiet sanctuary of the study, she powered on her laptop. With a deep breath, she opened the folder containing their wedding photos. The intimate ceremony in Las Vegas, just the two of them bathed in the glow of flickering candles. Each image now felt tainted, a cruel reminder of what might have been a lie. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she composed an anonymous email. Attaching the photos, she addressed it to every major media outlet and gossip site. Billionaire Morgan Shine's secret wedding exposed. What is he hiding? Her heart pounded as she clicked send. A part of her hesitated, torn between love and vengeance, but the sting of Richard's revelation spurred her on. The response was immediate and explosive. By morning, headlines screamed from every platform. Scandal rocks Silicon Valley, Morgan Shine's secret marriage revealed. Mystery bride unveiled, who is Karen Strady? Billionaire's hidden wedding sparks controversy. Social media erupted with speculation. Some praised Morgan for finding love, others mocked the secrecy and questioned Karen's background. Within hours, their private union became a public spectacle. Morgan was blindsided. As he arrived at his office, reporters swarmed, flashing cameras and shouting questions. Mr. Shine, why did you keep your marriage a secret? Is it true you married your assistant? Are the rumors about a bet true? He pushed through the crowd, a stormy expression on his face. In meetings, colleagues cast sidelong glances, whispers rippling through the room. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls from board members and investors demanding explanations. Karen watched the chaos unfold from the quiet of the mansion. Each news segment and article brought a bittersweet satisfaction. Morgan's carefully curated image was crumbling, just as her trust in him had shattered. She didn't confront him. Instead, she maintained a facade of normalcy, answering his calls with measured calm. Karen, have you seen the news? He asked urgently during one call. Yes, it's all quite surprising, she replied evenly. Do you have any idea how this got out? His voice was edged with frustration. None at all, she lied smoothly. Perhaps someone at the chapel sold the story. He sighed heavily. This is a PR nightmare. I need to handle this. Of course, she said, her tone inscrutable. Do what you need to do. As he delved into damage control, she prepared for the next step. As Karen weighed her options, a war raged within her. Part of her wanted to dismiss Richard's words as a cruel ploy to drive a wedge between her and Morgan, but another part, the part that had seen too much of the ugly side of life, couldn't ignore the nagging doubt. Determined to verify Richard's claims about Morgan's illegal activities, Karen sought out the services of Olivia Grant, a renowned private investigator with a reputation for unearthing even the most well-concealed secrets. In a discreet meeting at a quiet cafe, Karen laid out her request. I need you to investigate Morgan Shine's business dealings, she explained. I suspect he's involved in illegal activities. Money laundering, tax evasion, perhaps more. Olivia studied her thoughtfully. That's a serious accusation. May I ask why you believe this? Karen met her gaze steadily. Let's just say I have information from a reliable source. I need concrete evidence. Very well, Olivia agreed. This will require extensive resources and could take several weeks. Whatever it takes, Karen affirmed, sliding an envelope across the table. Here's a retainer. I trust your discretion. As the investigation commenced, Karen maintained her composure around Morgan. He remained preoccupied with salvaging his public image, scarcely noticing her distant demeanor. A week has passed, each day a test of patience. Karen threw herself into activities to distract from the turmoil. She took up painting again, spent hours in the library, anything to keep her mind occupied. Finally, Olivia requested a meeting. In a secluded park, away from prying eyes, she presented her findings. Your suspicions were correct, Olivia said grimly, handing over a thick dossier. Morgan has been funneling money through offshore accounts, engaging in tax evasion, and there's evidence suggesting involvement in money laundering schemes tied to shell companies. Karen felt a mix of vindication and sorrow as she flipped through the documents. This is enough to involve federal authorities? Yes, Olivia confirmed, but you need to be cautious. Exposing him could have repercussions. I'm prepared for that, Karen replied resolutely. Can you ensure this reaches the right people anonymously? I can, Olivia assured her. Are you certain about this? Karen nodded, her expression hardened by resolve. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. The authorities moved swiftly. Armed with Olivia's evidence, they launched a full-scale investigation into Morgan's financial empire. News broke of the inquiry, sending shockwaves through the business community. Morgan Shine under federal investigation for financial crimes. Allegations of money laundering and tax evasion surface against tech mogul. Morgan's world unraveled rapidly. His assets were frozen, stock prices plummeted, and business partners distanced themselves to avoid collateral damage. He was eventually arrested, the image of him being led away in handcuffs broadcast across the nation. Throughout the ordeal, Karen remained a silent observer. Legally, as his wife, she had rights to shared assets. Without initiating divorce proceedings, she strategically secured control over key properties and funds that were not seized by authorities. The mansion, once a symbol of their union, became her sanctuary. She oversaw renovations, stripping away the cold opulence and infusing warmth and personality into the space. Embracing her independence, Karen embarked on a journey of self-discovery and transformation. She hired a personal trainer, adopted a balanced and nutritious diet, and explored activities that nurtured her spirit. Yoga, hiking, dance. As weeks turned into months, the physical changes were evident. She shed weight, her body becoming toned and strong. Her inner vitality radiated outward, her hazel eyes bright with confidence and determination. But the most profound transformation was within. Free from deception and betrayal, she reconnected with her passions: art, music, philanthropy. She invested in charitable causes, using her wealth to make a positive impact on the lives of others. Her story captured public attention. Media outlets chronicled her journey. Karen Shine, rising from the ashes of betrayal. From scandal to strength, how Karen reclaimed her life. Invitations poured in for her to speak at events, sharing her experiences and inspiring others. At a prestigious women's conference, she stood before a captivated audience. Adversity does not define us, she spoke with conviction. It's our response to it that shapes our destiny. I chose to turn pain into purpose, to rebuild not just my life, but to uplift others along the way. Applause thundered through the auditorium, a testament to the resonance of her message. Meanwhile, Morgan faced the stark reality of his downfall. In prison, stripped of power and influence, he had ample time to reflect. News of Karen's transformation and successes reached him, each piece a bittersweet reminder of what he had lost through his own actions. One day, he penned a letter, though he doubted it would ever reach her. Karen, I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. but I want you to know that I am truly sorry for the pain I caused you. Seeing what you've achieved fills me with both regret and admiration. You are stronger than I ever realized. Morgan. Karen received the letter through her attorney. She read it silently, emotions flickering across her face. Folding it carefully, she placed it in a drawer, a closed chapter. Years passed, and Karen continued to thrive. She had established a foundation supporting women entrepreneurs, mentored countless individuals, and remained a beloved figure in philanthropic circles. At a gala celebrating the 10th anniversary of her foundation, she stood beneath glittering chandeliers, surrounded by friends and supporters. Dressed in a sophisticated gown that accentuated her elegant figure, she exuded grace and confidence. A familiar figure approached. Richard, his once sharp demeanor softened by time. "Karen," he greeted with a tentative smile, "may I congratulate you on your remarkable achievements?" She regarded him calmly. "Thank you, Richard." He hesitated. "I've wanted to apologize for a long time. My actions were inexcusable. You didn't deserve any of it." She considered him for a moment. "No, I didn't, but I've moved beyond it." "Is there any way I can make amends?" he asked sincerely. "Live your life differently," she replied. "Ensure that others aren't hurt by your ambitions." He nodded solemnly. "I will." As he walked away, Karen felt a sense of closure. The wounds of the past had healed, leaving her stronger and wiser. Stepping onto the stage to address the attendees, she smiled warmly. "Tonight is not just a celebration of milestones achieved," she began, "but of the resilience of the human spirit. We all face challenges that test us, but it's our choice to rise above them, to transform adversity into opportunity." The audience rose in a standing ovation, the applause echoing through the grand hall. Karen looked out over the sea of faces, gratitude swelling in her heart. She had forged her own path, embraced her true self, and found fulfillment beyond what she once thought possible. Her journey from betrayal to empowerment stood as a beacon of hope, a testament to the strength that lies within us all. And as she descended the stage, surrounded by warmth and admiration, she knew that she had not only survived, but triumphed. Karen's life flourished in the years that followed. She found love again, not in grand gestures or whirlwind romances, but in a steady, genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. Walking hand in hand through the gardens of her transformed mansion, she reflected on the twists of fate that had brought her here. The sun cast a golden glow over the landscape, mirroring the contentment she felt within. She had reclaimed her narrative, not as a victim of circumstance, but as the architect of her destiny. And she looked forward to each new day with joy, embracing the endless possibilities that life had to offer. And that's the incredible journey of Karen, who turned a devastating betrayal into a life of triumph. Her transformation shows us that even when the truth feels unbearable, it can also be the catalyst for finding our truest strength. What would you do if you discovered your marriage was based on a lie? Could you rise above like Karen did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear how you'd rewrite your own story of resilience. If you're inspired by Karen's journey, make sure to subscribe for more stories of perseverance and personal growth. Until next time, remember, no matter the challenge, there's always a way to reclaim your power and happiness. Stay happy.